Hello and good evening, everyone, and welcome to the fifth session of the Friendly Beekeeper webinar series organized by Dilmah Conservation. In our previous webinar, we discussed about the language of the bees and how honeybees talk to each other. Sorry for inconvenience, we'll resume shortly. Hello and good evening, everyone, and welcome to the fifth session of the Friendly Beekeeper webinar series organized by Dilmah Conservation. In our previous webinar, we discussed about the language of the bees and how honeybees talk to each other. Today, we are going to talk about designing a bee garden. Our resource person for the day is Dr. Anura Indrajit Sirisena, who is a senior lecturer of etymology and the head of the Department of Plant Sciences at the Faculty of Agriculture, Rajarat University of Sri Lanka. I welcome you all on behalf of Dilmah Tea and Dilmah Conservation for today's session. Before we start today's session, there are a few announcements to make. If you have missed any of our previous webinars, you can simply visit our Facebook page and find them in the video section. All participants must register with a valid and working email address for the webinar series, as there will be a valuable e-certificate issued for your participation in this webinar series. It is important to provide your correct information. Please note that you have to be part of at least 5 webinars in order to be eligible to receive the certificate, which will be awarded at the end of the series. So during this webinar, we will have interesting poll questions, and all of you are welcome to give them a try to make the session more interesting and interactive. And if you have any questions related to today's session, you can simply put them in the Q&A tab, or you can put them as comments in our Facebook Live video. But please refrain from asking questions in the chat section of the webinar. So without further ado, Dr. Anura, we can start our webinar.
Yes, thank you very much for the introduction. And yeah, I think most of you have been working with us, participating in this webinar series. As she mentioned, we have covered many aspects of beekeeping now up to now. Now, today we are going to talk about very interesting topic, right? That is how to design a bee garden. Okay. Now, when you want to establish a new bee garden or beekeeping unit or apiary, right? We used to say apiary. Right, so there are some factors to be considered, right? And maybe it is your home garden, right? Or maybe some another piece of land, right? Or maybe it's a commercial land, whatever it is, right? Before you establish an apiary, so we have to make the environment conducive for the bees, right? Now, I'm not talking about keeping 1 or 2 colonies in your home garden, right? If there is the case, you don't want to have any advanced planning, right? You can just keep your colonies in where you want in your home garden, right? But when it comes to a kind of apiary, I mean a special beekeeping unit or a unit that you establish seeking some commercial value, right? So if you want to make honey commercially, right? So then you have to think about, because we will deal with a large number of colonies. Therefore, there are something that we have to think. Actually, basic things you can see, as you can see here, there should be enough flowers, right? So the food is matter quite a lot. So, you know, bees are collecting nectar and pollen, as we discussed earlier as well, right? So we have to provide enough food for the honeybees in order to their sustainability, right? Now, today we will see actually what are the things that we can do with respect to their foraging. Okay. Now you can see here a bee that have collected lots of pollens on her basket, right, in the rear, the hind leg. the baskets are full of with pollen here. Now, you know, there is a special gadget what we call pollen basket or the Corbicula, right? So they collect actually pollen as the protein source. We have discussed it earlier as well. And they collect nectar from flowers just as a sugar source, so the carbohydrate source, right? So that means we should be able to provide both pollen as well as nectar sources, right? Therefore, maybe in the environment, there may be different types of flowering plants, right? Foraging plants or bee pasture, right? So some of the plants are good at giving pollens, and some of them have a good nectar, right? So, but when we want to have a number of bee colonies in a one particular place, we have to ensure that the both types of plants are there in clear or near close proximity to your garden, right? And you know, their body is totally adapted to collect pollen. So this is an eye, right? So you can see lots of hair stuck on that, and the pollen's also stuck on that, right? So they don't waste these things. So they brush them all by using their pollen comb, and they keep them in their basket, and then they lodge these things in their hive when they back to hive. Yes. Now, flowering plants or the flowers should available throughout the year. If there is a bee colony nearby, it's an apiary, there should be flower throughout the year, right? The flowers should bloom throughout the year. Otherwise, during one period they have flowers, food sources, and the other time they don't have flower. Right? So and also the pesticide should not be applied in very nearby places. Now that means if the apiary is located very near to a kind of farmer field, right? So intensive agriculture practices are going on, such as application of pesticide. It's not a good place or a suitable site for you to establish a kind of apiary, right? And yeah, the perfect flower, right? So the shape of the flower is also important, right? You know, some flowers are very big, right? So they are nectaries, or the nectarodes are located, or the nectar available very deeper in the flower, right? So in such case, bees may not able to reach the nectar because they are very small, and their tongue is not that much long, like in Lepidoptera, you know, in butterflies and more. They have very long tubular proboscis, right? So they can take nectar from even a bigger flowers, right? Therefore, the flowers available for the bee should have some special morphology, right? So the pollen that they should be able to get readily, right? For example, the Asteraceae family, right? So the pollen's already exposed to the outside, so easily they can take the pollen, right? So even the nectar. And the flower should bloom right time of the year, right? So and right time of the day. Now, if the flowers are available during the night time, what's the use of for the bees? Now, they are not active during the night time, right? So basically, bees are working during the daytime. So therefore, the flowers should bloom during the day, right? Maybe the dosat of bumblebee may be collecting some nectar during the night time. There are some cases, but basically honeybees, they are working during the daytime. Therefore, the flowers has to be there during the day. Therefore, when you select planting material, right? So you have to think about that as well. And
okay, we have our first poll for the session today. The question is, bees are unable to see which colors, and the options are green, purple, red, and ultraviolet colors. So all those who are part of the webinar, you can answer now. According to the answers, we have 16% who say that bees can't see green, 10% who say they can't see purple, 17% say they can't see red, and 57% say that the bees can't see ultraviolet colors. Yes. What do you think, Ms. Doctor?
Yeah, it's very interesting to see the results today, right? Actually, the bee's vision is very wonderful, right? Now, it's not like humans, right? Now, actually, they can see colors better than us. Their range is very high, and they can see ultraviolet colors also, right? The ultraviolet light, actually, they can see. Therefore, they can see the nectar, right? They can see the nectar of flowers, which other animals can't do actually, that, right? So when they are flying, they can see the nectar where you can find in the flower, because they can see the ultraviolet color, right? Now human beings also, we have a kind of trichromatic vision. So that's mean we have some photoreceptors, 3 type of photoreceptors. Based on these photoreceptors, we can see colors, right? So our combination is red, blue, and green, right? So but in case of honeybees, they are base of the receptors actually ultraviolet light, blue and green. Therefore they cannot see red color, right? So honeybees cannot see red color, but we can do, because they don't have a correct pigment for that. So that is the reason for that, right? And here you can see the range of the humans that we can. Now we can see the red color, but bees cannot see the red color because they don't have that pigment and photoreceptor for that. And their most preferred colors actually violet, purple, right? Blue light colors are the most preferred colors. Actually, why is it important? Now, if your apiary have some flowers with maybe lots of red color things, right? It may not attracted by, I mean, they may not particularly look this or see these flowers. That doesn't mean that they cannot see red color flowers. They see maybe as dark color flowers or something like that. They may not attract that much, that's me, right? So, but still, if it is violet color or purple, what we call bee purple, right? So then they may be more attracted to such sort of flower. Therefore, when we selecting some flowering plants, again at the beginning, you can think about this color as well. And when we think about bees vision, it's very imprecise, right? So now it's not like that now in humans. So they have large number of ommatidia in their eyes, right? So what we call complex or compound eyes. So if you think about a large worker, right, adult worker, they may have more than 6,000 ommatidia, right? So from each and every individual ommatidia, they may have an individual vision. I mean, if you see something by using a set of straws, drinking straw, you know, if you have a bundle of straws, and if you see something through the straws, you will see a fragment or a fraction of a whole picture, right? Similarly, they will see the things likewise, right? Now, each and every ommatidia will see a fraction of an image, and then they will have a kind of mosaic look at the end, right? So it's completely different in compared to human vision, right? Now, anyway, this we have to think about when we are thinking about when you design the apiary also, right? And you, as I told you earlier, the purple color, right? The violet color is the most preferable color for them to attract it, right? Now, still, whatever it's the color, now the scents coming up from that flower or the sugar content will also important, right? The fragrant flowers may be more attractive. Now you can see here one of the red color flower, right? So which is available in the upcountry area, right? In our Hatton-like area, you can see this sort of flowers. Now, although it is reddish color, the most bees are actually attracted. Now, our findings also reveal that, and they are attracted to this sort of flowers very significantly, right? It is because it has very good scents in it, right? So they can, I mean, honeybees have very good sense on the scents, different smells of a flower, right? So that's why we say when we are about to handle bees, not to use any scents, deodorants, right? Because they can feel it and they get confused sometimes. But the scents coming up from the flowers are very good for them. Therefore, it's another, actually, why flowers are making these things, right? Why they are making this different color and different scents, just to attract insect, right? Not only honeybees and other insects, because then only they can they can get pollinated, right? Now, if you think about the flowers that bloom during the night, you can't find lots of colors. They are only most of the time they have some dull color, maybe white color, right? But who can see the color during the night? That's why. But they have lots of very strong sense in it, especially the flowers that bloom during the night, right? But in the daytime, you can see lots of colorful flowers, right? The secrets behind it just to invite the different agents for the pollination, right? Especially bees. Okay, now when you want to select flowers, again think about that. And not only nectar, right? We have to think about the pollen as well. Now, coconut is a good pollen source, right? So under coconut cultivation, you can keep colonies without a problem, because throughout the year, they provide pollens for the honeybees, right? So finger millet like things, right? Good pollen sources. But in contrast to that, rubber and the flower like nasturtiums, right? So they are good nectar sources, right? So the nectar sources we can provide by giving good particular plants, right? And on the other hand, we can think about pollen sources also, right? Now, if it is now already established place, right? Already now, if it is a home garden, maybe you have both type of plants, the pollen sources and nectar sources, right? Or if you are going to start a new apiary, right? Then you can think about establishing both type of vegetations or the plants in order to provide enough sources throughout the year. And another thing that you can do, you can check, right? You can go through the flowering variation. I mean, how it varied during the temporal variation and spatial variation, right? Now, temporal variation mean you can develop a kind of pollen calendar or the flower calendar, right? Flower calendar. Now, you can see some of the plants are blooming during February and March, likewise, but some of the flowers are not there, right? Now, you have to continue this one, and you have to have a kind of complete calendar for your area before you establish in a kind of apiary. Then you can have an idea, okay, during which period the flowers are not available, right? You know, different plant species. Some plants bloom during the dry period. Some plant maybe during the wet season, likewise, right? Then you have to overlap all these things in order to get a kind of year-round flower availability in your area, right? So to do that, you may have to do a kind of initial pasture survey or foraging survey, and prepare this pollen or flower calendar, and accordingly you can decide what type of plant that you have to select in establishment in an apiary, right? And again, you can think about the spatial variations also. Then, I mean, you can count how many plants are there in respective, now if it is cohoba, how many cohoba plants are there? How many tamarind plants are? Likewise, the spatial as well as the temporal variations also you have to consider. And another experiment that you can do before you establish in your the plants in your apiary, right? You can check the bee visitation, right? Bee visitation. Now that's mean number of how many bees visit a particular plant. For that, actually, you can actually don't think that all flowers are visited by all plants are bee plants, right? Just because the bees are landing on that plant maybe for a second or so, right? Actually, to be a bee plant, so the bee should be there for at least 15 minutes. I mean, they have to spend some time on the flowers. So therefore, you have to observe maybe around 15 minutes, right? And maybe in the morning and evening, you have to do that, right? And then you can get an idea whether this is a bee plant or not. And how many times bees are visiting a particular plant, right? So likewise, by using this data, you can maybe plot like that, right? Or you can compare. Now, according to that, you can see this nasturtiums plant has more bee visitation. That is a good, a kind of ideal candidate for upcountry areas, right? So likewise, you may screen out, right, among the local vegetation. You can think what are the plant species, what are the flowering or potting species or ornamental species that you can employ in your bee garden or your home garden, right? And if we go forward, right? Now, when we design in our apiary, again, there are three aspects we have to think about, right? So we have to think what actually you want as a beekeeper, what do you want? And what actually bees need, right? What are their requirements? And needs of the neighbors as well. You kind of forget about their neighbors, right? And in case of needs of the beekeeper, now location, whether you are going to use your home garden, or you have a commercial kind of venture, or you have a kind of very large or maybe estate or something like that, and the resources you have, right? So you don't want very sophisticated equipment, but there are some essential things that you have to have, maybe different hive, different sorts of hives, and the smokers, right? And the colony stands, right? Like resources you have to find at first. And resources, under the resources, that foraging plants also a kind of very important resources, right? So if there are no any flowering plants in nearby, you can't even think about making an apiary, right? So then you have to go, you have to make some, I mean, you have to establish some vegetation or the bee foraging plant, then only you have to work on. The number of colonies. Now, how many colonies you want to keep? Are you thinking to have 1 or 2 colonies? Then your home garden may be ideal for that, right? But if you want to have a kind of 10 colony, 15 colony, or 40, 50 like that, then you are going to do kind of commercial beekeeping. Now that is also matter, right? Now when you are selecting a kind of place and needs of the bees. Now, you know, if large number of bees colonies keep in a one particular place, so there will be a kind of competition if there are food scarcity, right? So therefore, so there is a kind of maximum colony that you can keep in a particular place, right? So if you are going to exceed that threshold level, so you have to provide some extra feeding, right? Maybe supplementary feeding may require, or some other source of food may have to supply in terms of vegetation or in terms of supplementary feeding, right? So we can discuss. And bee pasture, foraging plants, right? So what sort of foraging plants desired by bees? That is also very important. Having just kind of plants are not work for them. Then water availability. Water is very essential for the bees because they are collecting water, right? So they collect water, they drink water. Therefore, it's normally say that there should be a water availability maybe within 8 to 10 meter distance within the apiary, right? So it should not be very far with that. Then they have to waste energy in collecting water. Then what about neighbors, right? So you have to think about neighbors as well. If there are some kids around in, and if there are some playground also, right? It's not a good place for you to keep apiary, right? Because you know, the kids, they don't know what it is, and then they will disturb, right? And they maybe they attack, right? And also, if you are keeping a bee colonies in a kind of center of a community, I mean, maybe center of a town or someone, right? There are lots of obstacles for the bees, right? So the way should be very free for them to come. I mean, leave from the hive and come back to the hive. There should not be obstacle in between, right? Now, you know, if there are lots of houses, lots of neighbors are nearby, right? There may be different walls and nets and maze, right? So the bees will simply stuck on this thing. Therefore, it is always good to have a kind of open area, right? Maybe close to a forest area or something like maybe a state, right? Where not much neighbors are hang around, right? And also you have to think about a place where wild animals are not that much frequent. Now, you know that monkeys and all these other wild animals, sometimes they destroy everything, right? So when you establish the colony, they will just come and they destroy everything. So you should make sure that there are no any wild animals are attacking that. Actually, in other countries, it may be bears, right? So bears will come and damage the colonies. Likewise, it can happen. So when you are selecting a colony, you have to think about these aspects. And also, if you are given a task, I mean, to find a suitable location in a kind of estate or a kind of large landscape, right? So then you have to think about how to select good places, right? In such case, maybe you can have a kind of satellite images, or and then you can identify different land use pattern in an area, right? So with the where the home gardens are located, where the forests are located, likewise, right? Forest patches are there. Sorry. And then you can give a kind of index, right? So you can identify where the agricultural lots and the low vegetation, trees, buildings, water, right? And then accordingly, you can rank the places, right? And then identify where are the suitable places. And maybe in the next slide, we can, okay, now you can see one of the area that we were working, we have been working, right? So you can have a kind of aerial photograph. Now in the left side, you can see a kind of map in the North Central Province, right? Here you can see the black color dots, those are the home gardens. And in yellow color, you can see, not yellow, slightly orange color, you can see their Chena cultivation, right? And in blue color, you can see water. And if I want to have some bee colonies, if I want to keep some bee colonies, I will go for these brown color areas, right? Where the home gardens are located, very close to Chena cultivation. What is the idea? Then the people can look after their colonies, and bees can go for the foraging, maybe to the Chena or the related forest area, likewise. And here in the right hand side, you can see another area that in the wet zone, right? So likewise, you can have a kind of idea about the land use mapping, right? and you don't want to keep the colonies in a highly populated area, right? Rather than, and not in a center of a forest even, right? And then it is again difficult, because when the bees are go into the forest, right, for the foraging, there may be they will find sometimes difficult to come back to the hives. And I mean, and also legally you cannot hang around in a forest, right, if it is a restricted forest. So what is good is you can keep colonies in the buffer zone, right, or maybe in a chain of cultivation likewise, right? So depending on that, you may have to think about the locations where you want to go keep the colony. Right. Now, what about the number of colonies that you can keep? Normally, the foraging range for Serrana, the Asian honeybee, is 300 meters, right? So, but it's not. Does not mean that we have to keep the colonies 300 meters apart, right? You can keep colonies very nearby. Maybe at least 3 meter distance should be there in between two colony, right? So then you can keep any number of colonies. But again, what is matter? There should be enough foraging resources for them, and also, as you can see, their water resources, right? So you can see how they are drinking water, and maybe you can have a kind of small pond like thing, right? And you can keep some rock in it, and then they can easily landing on that and drink water likewise. So so depending on that, I mean, you can decide how many colonies you want to keep in your API. Okay, now you can see some examples. These are not from Sri Lankan, but Sri Lanka, because you can see the hives are very big. These are, if it's Mellifera one. Anyway, you can see, you can keep any number of colonies in a place. The whole idea is there should be enough flowering sources, right? Flowering or the foraging sources. And when you don't have enough flowering plants or the flowers in your environment, so what you can do is something else, right? So what we call migratory beekeeping. I think we can talk about migratory beekeeping. Yeah, migratory beekeeping is also very important. Now, in if you think about California or USA, right? So they are very good at it, right? I mean, migratory beekeeping means they move their colonies time to time, place to place, depending on the foraging availability, right? Now you can see here in this map, in January to March, the colonies are established in somewhere in California, and they move their colonies in during June to August, October, maybe in another area, right? So that's mean, because the flowers are available in California in this time of the year, and on the other times they bring the colonies by using this truck or something like that. You can bring all the colonies there. Then beekeeper will earn lots of money, and on the other hand, the farmers will get pollinated their crop. So therefore, both sides are getting benefits, right? Actually, in Sri Lanka, we have to promote this sort of thing, the migratory beekeeping. I know some people are trying to do these things. Actually, especially if you are keeping some bee colonies under rubber cultivation, rubber plantation, you know, during the wintering when the leaves are shedding, you know, in rubber plants, sometime some time of the year, the leaves are shedding, right? The wintering, what we call. And during that time, you cannot keep the colony because there are no food for the bees. So then you have to bring the colony somewhere else. So it's also kind of migratory beekeeping, right? So what we want to do is we have to formalize that one, right? And for example, the Siamese or the corn is a very good pollen source. So, you know, in the country, different areas, corns are available. And here you can see finger millet and gingerly, right? So gingerly is a very good nectar source, right? You know, in Monaragala, Bibila-like area, some time of the year. So there are lots of gingerly, or even in the dry zone. So during that time, right, you can keep any number of colonies very close to this gingerly, because plants, because lots of nectar in it, right? You can get large number of honey if you have a colony. I mean, yeah. During honey flow period, right? So you can harvest colonies several times, not only one time, right? But if you are not destroying your the combs, if you're using a honey extractor, you can extract honey several times, right? So to do that, there should be some flowering plants, I mean gingerly like plants in nearby, right? And yeah, and now we are going to talk about some well-known foraging plants that are available in our local situation. Maybe you can select a very good, I mean, if, plants that as you have in your area, maybe legumes, mustard, long beans, and this here you can see. Okay, right. Different ornamental plants are there, right? like Xenia, sunflower, nasturtiums, and these roses and the tagetes, right? And you know, the Xenia is very easy to grow anywhere in the country, even dry zone or wet zone, right? Xenia is a very good plant. And here you can see in the Xenia, there is not honeybee, it's a Floria bee, right? Floria bee, Danduel bee. Now that's been this sort of flowers can attract not only honeybee, some other bees also attract, and the pollinators also, the natural enemies also attracted, right? So therefore, think about that. So it's not very difficult for you to establish this sort of ornamental plants, right? And it's also, it gives some very good scene to your home garden. And what about weeds, right? Normally we neglect weeds, right? But weeds are also, we can consider as very important kind of foraging plant, right? And weeds like mimosa, right? Nidukumba, and grasses, the small plants, right? Different grasses, and the stagit, sorry, the Kurunagal daisy, so what we call yeah, Tridax, right? Now Tridax is a very good weed that we can find in the dry zone. Now you know, during the dry period we don't have any flowers in some during the dry period, right, here in the dry zone. But this stagit, sorry, Kurunagal daisy, right? So Tridax give flowers, right? They have flowers throughout the year. Now even in the morning, every morning I normally go, and when you go for the walking, you will see lots of bees are in the Tridax, right? So it's a very good kind of bee plant. And even in tea lands, right? Even in rubber lands, right? So even in a coconut land, there are lots of weeds available. So my recommendation, if you keep some bee colonies in your tea land or any other state, right? Don't remove weeds, right? Just keep weeds at least in the bunch, right? Don't apply weedicide as well, because weeds are wonderful foraging plants for them. I mean, don't think for the big resources always, right? The perennial plants, right? So these weeds are very important. This, for example, Antigona, the one that you saw earlier. And in case of orchard, right, the flower, fruit crops, it may be avocado, mango, banana, citrus, guava, even strawberries and cashew, right? And just missing here tamarind, I think, yeah. Then citrus, right? Very interesting thing is, now when some plants have flowers, the honey they produce also have some specific flavor in it. Now if for example, in case of neem or kohamba, right, when the flowers are available in kohamba plants, the honey they produce have some bitter in taste. It's not any, I mean, it's very bad bitter, right? It's very sweet kind of bitter taste, right? And when the flowers are there in tamarind, right, it's very good. I mean, it has some tamarind taste in it. Actually, if you are a kind of commercial beekeeper, you can think about that. I mean, you can produce different flavored honey. I mean, you don't artificially do that. The bees themselves, they do it, right? So then it has a very good value. Okay. Now, if it is a very rare flower species, then you can have a good price for them. I mean, other countries, they are doing these things. That's why I'm telling you, right? Right. The banana, even citrus, in the citrus honey have some lemony flavor in it, likewise. Then the rubber, right? Rubber have very good nectar thought there. I mean, lots of honey you can get from the rubber cultivation. And coconut, you know, it's a very good pollen source, right? And remember that the colonies under rubber, the coconut cultivation may be somewhat aggressive, right? And even you can see tea. Now, who thought that tea can use as a kind of bee foraging plant? Actually, we have some proven, I mean, evidences, right? So you can see some here in right hand side, you can see maybe the first time for in the country we established an apiary in a center of a kind of tea cultivation, right? So normally it's not practiced, right? So even tea plants are good bee plant, because the flowers of the tea can attract it or can provide lots of pollens for the bees. And as I told you earlier, the weeds under the tea cultivation, tea bushes, right? So like I mean, different weeds are available. So all the weeds have lots of pollen in there and nectar, some sort of nectar, right? So therefore you can keep colonies even in the tea land. And also in the tea land you can accept that high and low shade trees, right? So they also produce flower periodically. Now what you have to do actually, where there are no flower, right, you can make some other ornamental plants maybe nearby in the apiary, right? So then you can have kind of flowering plants throughout the year. And here in the coconut field, coconut land, you can see how they are doing. And the rubber cultivation, right? So in the rubber cultivation, as I told you earlier, you may have to think about during the dearth period or during the wintering, you have to keep the colony away, or you have to merge some weaker colonies and maintain as a small number of colonies likewise, or you have to you should have to do some supplementary feeding or something like that. So there are some management aspects that you have to do. Right. And yes, I told you this. Okay, now here you can see color well, Boccola well, right? Especially you can see in the dry zone. So it's a kind of vine, right? And normally flower produce only one per year, or maybe once per 2 year, right? So when they are producing flowers, you see lots of honey are there in their hive, right? Because this is a honey season in the dry zone when the color well and Boccola well are there. Now, it's interesting thing is only 1 week. Within a week, you will see the flowers disappear, right? So it's very specific time. Then if you can harvest honey during that time, that honey may be very nutritious and you can sell it, right? So this is color well based honey or something like that. And Kohamba honey like that, right? Think about it, tamarind honey or something like that. Because only a particular season you can find. Season mean only particular month, right? You can find these flowers, right? And what I suggest you is if you have bee colony somewhere, try to bring them there when the flowers are available. Then you can bring them again, right? You can move colony without a problem, right? Without a problem, you should be able to do that. It's not a very easy and fun thing to do, but it is not an impossible thing to do, right? So yeah. Yeah, then we can think about the red gum, right? Now, when it's up countries or the Badul, Bandarol area, right? The red gum zone is very important. So they produce lots of honey during when the flowers are available in eucalyptus. And Gliricidia, you can find flower throughout the year most of the time. And Albizia and now this Calliandra, they are you can see in estate, right? Maybe low shade, right? So again, these flowers are very good for the honeybees. Now you can, I mean, if these plants don't have any economical value, right, you can just establish them surrounding your home garden or surrounding the apiary, right? Maybe in the edges, right? Or maybe as a kind of fence, right? So then it automatically gives some foods for the honeybees, not only for the honeybees, other insects also, right? So they should be there in the environment, because otherwise this balance will be not there, right? So pollinators, predators, right? All the insects should be there. So the flowering plants, it is better to have surrounding you, especially surrounding your apiary. Okay. Then, so when we think about the bee cycle, right? Now, during some time, I mean, the bee colony will grow, and there's a honey flow period, and there's a dearth period, right? During the honey flow period, you can find lots of flower, then higher availability to nectar and pollen in the environment. So there may be lots of, now you will harvest honey during the honey flow period. And during the dearth period, right, you cannot find flowers. Therefore, bees are maybe in hunger, right? So they don't have enough food. So as a result of that, they may be starved, right? You have to give some food, some supplementary food for them. Otherwise, the number of bees will reduce, right? Or sometimes the colony will escape, right? I mean, sometimes if you have colonies, they may leave your place during some season. It is because of lack of foraging plant. I mean, nectar and pollen, right? So during the dearth period, another thing is, now normally the bees are cover their combs always, right? Normally it is not exposed, but when the dearth period is there, the number of bees are very low. Therefore, the waxes, I mean the combs are exposed to the external environment, right? There are no enough bees to cover all the comb. So as a result, the wax moth will come and attack, right? So it's an ideal time for the wax moth attack. Therefore, we have to keep the colony grow or colony maintains, right, during the dearth period. So what we can do during the dearth period, so we'll see, right? So what actually we have to do, we should give some so you can see the problem, absconding, right? Because of lack of it may be even the rainy season, high rainy season also may be harmful, right? And severe drought also harmful, right? The absconding mean they leave your place. So whatever the thing you give for them, they will leave. Then the reduction of population and the pest attack, right? So what are we going to do then? Okay, we have to give some feed for them, some supplementary feeding we have to practice. Actually, we normally give sugar syrup, right? So how to prepare a sugar syrup? So we can have clean sugar and hot water, clean hot water, and you can make a mixture, 1-to-1 ratio mixture. Don't concentrate it too much, then it is difficult for them to take it. And you can use any of these. You can see the local beekeepers use different clay pots, plastic trays, and coconut shells, right, for the feeding. So then after cooling this sugar syrup, you can keep on these containers, and you may keep some piece of twigs on it. Otherwise, the bees will draw on it and they will die at the end. And or else you can use, like in the image in the right hand side, you can keep it in a bottle and a feeder. So this you can buy a feeder and you can use a bottle like this, and you can keep the sugar syrup in this format. And remember, you have to replace this one maybe every 2 days or 3 days. Otherwise, it will get fermented, right? Now, if it is fermented, what will happen? So the bees will, if they use it, they may end up with some diarrhea or some other diseases or something like that. It's not good for them, right? Therefore, you have to replace if there are any remaining. Right. And for pollen substitute, I mean, not only nectar, the pollen substitutes also we have to provide. Now, as a pollen substitute, you can have a kind of thing like that. Maybe you can prepare a soya flour to maize flour to rice bran according to this ratio, right? And you can have a kind of 50 gram of this one, and you can add 100 grams of sugar to that one, and making some water. You can have a kind of slurry like thing, right? Or maybe a roti like thing, and you can just keep them on top of the frames, right? Then the bees will come and feed on that one. And also, you know, locally available product like summer posture or tree posture, right? Summer posture or tree posture, also very good for the bees. I mean, if you cannot make a kind of a food like that, as I mentioned earlier, you can take a summer portion and just dissolve with, put some sugar in it, and dissolve with good clean water. Then just feed your colonies, right? So it's very good for them. So you can see how we are doing it. We just keep them on top of the frame, right? Then as soon as you keep it, they will come and feed on that. And remember, you have to you have to clean the colony time to time if you are doing this artificial feeding or supplement feeding, because if there are any food remain there in the bottom, mites or cockroaches like things will grow, right? Then again it will be a kind of problem. And I forgot to tell you, right? So when you give in some sugar syrup, you can keep them maybe in the outside or the inside. I think we have a slide on that. Yeah, we can keep the sugar even outside or inside, right? So if you keep sugar syrup outside, you will have encounter some problem, because the bees of the old colonies will come and try to get it, and those bambara bee also will come and try to take this one. So there may become some competition, right? And you know, if there are some strong colonies, now in an apiary you can expect some weaker colonies and strong colonies, right? The members of the strong colony may always come and get the things, and sometimes actually these bees will go to another hive and rob the honey, right? So robbing bees are there, right? Now that this kind of thing can happen, the competition, sometimes cannibalism and fighting each other, right? Therefore it is always advisable, all right, to keep the sugar syrup inside or within the hive, right? Then the ants attack, and other I mean hornets, wasps like things may not be invited. Otherwise, if you keeping them outside, you may asking for troubles, right? Yeah. So you have to keep it inside the hive. Okay, with that, I think we discuss how to design an apiary, right? And what are the things we have to consider when we are designing an apiary. First thing is the location. You have to find a correct location. Or if you have a selected location already, you have to do some land use mapping or something like that. You have to select correct places, right? In that case, the foraging resources is very important. That means the food, right? And the water is important. And and the type of location that you are going to have, these things very important. And in case of foraging plants, throughout the year, the flowers should be there. Flowers should be in different colors. Some flowers are more preferable for the bees, some flowers may not, right? And if the flowers are not available in your area, maybe you can do a kind of migratory beekeeping. Migratory beekeeping is a very good way of doing beekeeping, right? It's kind of advanced aspect of beekeeping. And if any one of this is, or whatever the things that you have attempted, right? So during some months of the year, there may no any flowers in the environment, right? You have to identify that duration, and then you have to look after the colony during that time. I mean, what you call the dearth period. Then supplementary feeding you have to do. In supplementary feeding, you can do sugar syrup, or you can give some pollen substrate, right? Substitutes, right? So those are the things that actually we have to think in advance before you establish a bee colony. Now, even in your home garden, if you have any plan to keep 1 or 2 colonies, right? So just think about that. I mean, establish a 1 or 2 ornamental plants will add some quality to your home garden as well, right? So that's all actually we wanted to deliver today. So if you have any questions, maybe we can spend some time for the answer, right? How are we going to handle the questions?
Doctor, one of the
Yes.
questions is if the Dahaspatya flower attracts bees.
Sorry, I didn't get you. Can you ask again?
If the Dahaspatya flower attracts bees.
Yeah, the Dahaspatya, I mean, Tagetes. Yes, I mean, most of the time, the Dahaspatya or the Tagetes we use as a repellent, right? Repellent for the insects, I mean, because it has very strong aroma in it. And in agriculture, we use it to repel nematodes, even, right? In the soil, if you establish some Tagetes, nematodes will repel, right? Yeah, still some bees, but for the bees, it may not that much, I mean, bad thing, right? So yes, Tagetes, there are different types of Tagetes, and we saw special Atapethia. Have you heard about Atapethia? Yeah, those things can apply for the bees. It's not a, I mean, it's not kind of a most preferable one, but still you can use Tagetes.
Thank you, Doctor. So another question is rice a good nectar pollen source?
Rice?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
actually rice we cannot consider as a pollen source, right? For nectar source, no, neither nectar or a pollen source. We do not use normally rice for that purpose, right? But maize you can use. Because I have tried even some time back. I mean, I had some colonies in a very close to a paddy field, right? They are not visiting actually rice plants to get these things, but maybe other grasses, right? There is guinea grass and some small grass, right? Napier like grass, they visit. But rice, that it's not considered as a good pollen source actually. But maize and other sorghum like things, yeah, for sure. Finger millet are good.
So another question that we have is what's the best plant to grow easily in a garden to attract bees?
Yes, actually we have already showed you what type of foraging plants that commonly available in Sri Lanka. But in a home garden, if you need some very quick response, right, then you can go for the zinnias and nasturtiums, as I told you. If it is, I mean, in higher elevation, or if it is in dry zone, I may recommend that Tridax, Kurunegala daisies, right? You don't want to, I mean, put extra pressure, I mean, extra effort to cultivate this sort of thing. And even roses, any flowering plants, right? I mean, majority, right? Especially it belongs to Asteraceae family, right? Asters are very good.
Thank you, Doctor. So we have come to the end of today's session. And before we wind up, there are a few announcements to make. Please be sure to register with your correct email address in order to receive the feedback form, which will be sent one day after the webinar. And be sure to fill it and submit the form on time. Also, if your questions weren't answered today, don't worry. We will answer all the questions and send you the answers via an email. I would like to thank Dr. Anura on behalf of Dilma Tea and Dilma Conservation for your valuable time and for sharing some amazing information with us today. Hopefully, the next webinar for the Friendly Beekeeper webinar series will be held on the 26th of October, and it will be on handling bees, bee pests, and diseases. You can find out about the next webinar by following us on Facebook and Instagram. And we will also send an email with the necessary information as well. So with that, it's time to conclude our webinar for the day. Thank you all for taking part. Have a good day and be safe.